and welcome to another podcast of What the Tech. I'm your host, Rolando Rosas, and today we're talking about the top three mistakes that salespeople make when cold calling. And you can use this as well for prospecting for new clients. And over here in the other Magic Square, joining me today, as always, on Tuesdays afternoon, is Dave Kelly.
Rolando, nice to see you, man. How are things?
They're doing well. They're doing well. I'm enjoying my birthday today,
That's
and
right. Happy
yeah,
birthday.
I wouldn't miss it. I want to share with the people. I want to give them some knowledge and stuff that we've acquired and learned. And I'm finding that the more you share, the more people appreciate, and the more people appreciate, the more just kind of a circular thing kind of
Yeah.
goes
Yeah.
on.
So
So
so today's topic I think is going to be kind of fun. So top 3 mistakes that people are doing when they're prospecting or cold calling. This isn't necessarily a cold call out of the blue. We're not talking about folks that are selling magazine subscriptions and they're just nailing the phone for one reason. These are for the business salespeople. You know what?
that's
We're
right.
trying to introduce ourselves, bring some sort of value, uncover a sales opportunity, and we're trying to do that while not acting like salespeople because they see you coming a mile away.
It's hard to do, Dave. You want
It
to you
is.
want to get right to it, and you want to be all salesy. Over the past 20 years, you pick up a few things here and there, but sometimes hard habits are hard to break because they've been reinforced early, and you go to another place and then another boss, and they pretty much reinforce the same idea of
Right.
hit this, get the number, blah 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 blah. So we're gonna help those that are watching, and if you're watching on the playback today, sit back, relax. We'll have descriptions in the links. Go ahead, and before we jump into everything, I want to remind you to like, subscribe, and follow because there are going to be some things that we have that is not part of the podcast, but we release anyways as nuggets to our subscribers. So you want to make sure you subscribe and follow. If you're on YouTube, make sure you hit that bell. If you're on Facebook, I believe it's follow or like or something like that. So do all that stuff. Just hit all that stuff. All right, now we've got that out of the way. Let's jump right into the trivia. Are we ready for that, Ori? All right. So, we've got two. And by the way, I had no idea what we're doing today. It's completely like a surprise now. We've made that mandatory. So, two truths and a lie. Two of these statements are true, the other is false. All right. So, which is which? Number one, Alexander Graham Bell invented a quote wireless telephone in 1880. That sounds true to me. Number two, the smartphone was launched by Apple in 1993 called the Newton. Hmm. And number three, the first commercially available mobile phone, the Motorola Dynatac 8000, cost $39.99, so almost $4,000 in 1983. That one sounds fishy to me, Dave.
Yeah, we always get sorry, sometimes I'm very surprised by the answer on these. Um yeah, I have my idea in my head, but we'll figure that out at the end.
All right, well, let's jump right into what we're talking about. So, before we get into the first three mistakes, what we want to do is let folks know this is important stuff. So, Ori, are we doing listen up or pro tip? All right, so let's do a listen up. So you go, boom, listen up.
They gotcha.
He gotcha. He got me. So the number one tip that we have for making cold calls, Dave, is, or I should say, mistake
Yep.
that's made when cold calling or prospecting is not having a plan. And when you don't have a plan, you can fall apart when you're trying to deliver, whether that's the communication piece, whether you're trying to communicate your strategy, whether you're trying to accomplish a goal. You need to have a plan before you start going about attacking those prospects, whether that goal be a metric that you want to hit 20 calls a day or 100 calls, whatever that goal is. At least start with something in order so that you can also measure some of the success that you're having as you're going through making those calls or prospecting with those customers. And I think, Dave, one of those things that goes hand in hand with having a plan is having some kind of structure, right? Some way
Absolutely.
of keeping track of all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean prospecting is an important part of selling. You know, we need to uncover those opportunities so that we can position ourselves and start filling our pipeline. A lot of people believe that it comes with cold calling. I know a lot of successful salespeople out there. What they like to do is they like to schedule a pocket of time where all that they're going to focus on. So they won't check their emails. Maybe they'll shut off their phone, send it to voicemail. Keep it so that you're focused primarily on just that one task, so that you're not distracted. Get out as many calls as you can, and hopefully you'll find something during that process.
And one of the other things, and you're talking about process, is Dave, is that part of the process is aided when you have some type of system in place, whether that be some kind of CRM, whether it's something like a Salesforce, or even spreadsheets, but something that you can go to, take the information that you have, whether it's your prospect list, and you have their emails, their phone numbers, maybe their LinkedIn profile, and it helps if you have some other relevant information. Dave, when I'm talking to clients or clients that I'm trying to engage with, I find that the little extra mile that you go to, let's say I go into a LinkedIn profile, I'm trying to connect with another CEO, or maybe a guest that we're trying to land on this show. And if I go in, just study a little bit of what they've maybe posted on LinkedIn, posted in the past, something they've felt passionate about, and then bring that back into whatever I'm trying to do, whether it's an email or a video call or a phone call, and say, hey, I saw that last podcast that you were on, that you were talking about environmental issues and how it's impacting third world countries. You're going to get somebody that's going to immediately know that you took some time and you
Yeah.
invested in them.
Yeah, I like that. I like that approach a lot. I've heard some people do things where they'll reference, again, like you said, maybe it's an article on LinkedIn, maybe it was something that was published in a newspaper, maybe it's not business related at all.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that these people are Brooklyn Nets fans, and you watch the Celtics get crushed over the weekend, and you're calling up that customer and you're saying, hey, listen, I was thinking about you this weekend when my team was getting their butt kicked. Hey, since we have it on, now that we're on the phone call, now you can kind of position yourself, learn a little bit more, but you're kind of breaking the ice, and you have a plan to build that rapport, maybe just outside of what you're trying to sell.
I heard from I think it must have been a podcast with Gary V. Gary V's, he does all kinds of motivational and social media work, and media stuff. He was trying to go after a client, and talk about planning, I guess, of some individual at a particular company that he was targeting, and he had his team find out everything he was interested in. Every like you said, the Brooklyn Nets, and he found out what team he liked, all of that stuff, and then he sent them some type of gift that was specifically about that thing. So let's just, in this, I couldn't remember what team it was, but I remember it was a sports team this guy was a fan of. If you know that a particular potential client loves the Brooklyn Nets, uh, try to send them a gift on that. If it's, and I know some industries, there may be some regulations around gifting, but something, maybe even a card, because people don't write anymore. And as I've been listening to other podcasts, the value of writing something by hand or by snail mail, people still read that,
Yeah.
because it you do get all the direct marketing pieces. I won't call it junk mail, but the direct marketing pieces that come into your mailbox. You will still read a letter that somebody hand writes to you, because it's not an email. It's not a it's everything's kind of like digital now, right? And going back analog in some ways is in vogue, like Clubhouse, which is old audio, is in vogue, and all these other social media platforms are going audio as well. But my point is that if you have a way to break through, and go counter against what everybody's doing, just the regular email. I'll tell you from my own little box of things. I get emailed every day from all kinds of people, and the things that stand out to me are not the pages of an email, like some people write in long, 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 and God bless them for trying to, put some effort into it. But those that are concise, get to the point, and have some kind of action, some deliverable or some kind of action plan that allows me to know what to do. Okay, so I know you sell copiers. What are you looking for? And I appreciate those that, like I said, those that have gone out the way, maybe notice something. And you know what? I'm more likely to respond when somebody goes out of their way and maybe has a plan versus those that just call you at 7 p.m. and you're in the middle of dinner and it sounds like a boiler room behind you. And we're going to get to that in a moment.
I'll tell you, the handwritten note, it's definitely old school. It was successful for me years ago. I was trying to get into this customer, this prospect down in Atlanta. The phone calls didn't work, the emails didn't work, and something had happened, and I did a handwritten note and I sent it their way. They never responded to the note. But like 2 months later, I was in Atlanta. I was meeting with some clients, and I said, listen, I'm going to stop by that office. Like old school, knock, 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 no solicitors. I want to talk to this guy.
Right. That's real old school, Dave.
Dude, the admin let me in. So you saw the conversation. The admin let me in. He came out. He greeted me, brought me to his office. He went to his filing cabinet, and he pulled out a file that said Dave Kelly, Global Tech Worldwide, and he took out a note, and it was the note that I had sent him. He's like, "You sent me this, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "I haven't. Nobody's tried that in such a long time. Let's talk." And we had a nice meeting, one-on-one.
Wow. That's amazing. Dave, the other thing about handwritten notes, I've been, as you meet other people, you find out what's going on, what works for them. There are companies popping up now, small businesses that are in the business of doing just that.
Wow.
They will handwrite notes and send them on your behalf to clients and people and other kinds of stuff. And it shows that snail mail in some ways is still working. That personal connection that you can make on a handwritten note is still there, and that could be part of your plan. And now maybe that may not, for some of you that are listening, that may not be feasible. But if you're going after high value targets that, and maybe you have a long sales cycle, it may be worth looking at that as an option in terms of hitting specific targets, specific potential customers that would respond to that. I know that one of the things that I've been doing more recently that seems to work well is using video email, so that hey Dave, how you doing?
Yeah.
I heard that you were a diehard Red Sox fan. I just want to know, I'm going to be in the Boston area next week. If it's possible for you and I to get together, yada 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 yada, fill in the blanks of what I'm trying to do, action item, blah blah blah. And people tend to respond more to that video that you email them than the hundreds of emails. If you're like most folks, Dave, you probably get hundreds of emails a day. And that video just stands out like, oh, you took some time to personalize even a standard canned message like
Right.
that to
Right.
me. And that seems to cut through the inbox clutter that a lot of folks have. So having a plan is definitely the way to go. Dave, did you want to add something else there to that?
Nope. I think you hit it on the head. Hit
All
the
right.
nail on the head.
Nail on the head. All righty. So have a plan. We gave you some tips on things you could do around your plan. And now let's go to mistake numero dos. Okay.
Number two.
Number
You
two.
know, this is right in our wheelhouse right here. Number two. The
Number two. Hey, Ori, can we cue up pro tip? Okay. All right. So, pro tip number two is kind of in our wheelhouse, but it's something that can apply to anybody that is prospecting with clients. Uh, One of the things I'm sure everybody that's listening to this or watching this can relate to getting a call, and it does sound like a boiler room operation where there's 500 people in the room, they're all screaming and yelling. And that's the last thing you want to do, whether it's in the afternoon, in the evening, or in the morning when you get that call, is engage with that person on the other line, because it doesn't sound personal. It just sounds like everybody is on a call with a script talking to 500 other people. And one way to make that personal is to make that communication sound personal. And if it sounds like a boiler room, it's not personal. But if I, and I'm just going to get a little closer to the mic, Dave, if I go in here and talk a little bit like this, now it sounds like you and I are having a more one on one, more intimate, more rich conversation about whatever it is we're talking about, right?
Right.
And it hits on your emotional senses, and it speaks to you in a way then that's different than if you were out here shouting and there's 500 people screaming and yelling, they're all in the script trying to sell you air conditioning services, right?
It's definitely true. You know, when we did the trailer for this, I wasn't kidding about the things I was saying. Salespeople calling and they don't sound good. If they can't communicate to their prospect, how are they going to get to the next step? So the second biggest mistake that people are doing when prospecting or cold calling is that they're not using a professional quality headset. Yes, of course, Global Tech Worldwide. That's our core business. Of course, that's what we're hoping to educate folks on. But it's absolutely true. If you're using a hand receiver, if you're using a poor headset without a good noise canceling microphone, you're not doing yourself any favors. And all you're doing is you're frustrating the prospect on the other end of the call. On the
Right.
other end of the call.
Absolutely, Dave. And how many people, and you see it. You see it when you go to the airport, when you're walking, people talking to other people on speakerphone. Hey, Bill, Bob, and it's so distracting for that other person, even if it were a personal call. Something with this personal
Of
call,
course.
it doesn't matter. But if you want to put your best foot forward, whether you're using one of these or, like Dave said, you're using one of these handsets, if you could deliver your voice in the best possible manner to the client, the maybe internal, if you have a big organization and you deal with supporting other folks internally, if you don't have to repeat yourself, the person on the other line is going to be one, they're going to put their shield down a little bit. Oh yeah, I hear what you're saying. Two, again, it becomes personal. And three, when you and I can communicate, we can more easily exchange ideas. And if the goal is to try to eventually sell them something, you've taken down a friction point. So the point here is that having a professional quality headset will help take down the friction, and from the immediate jerk knee reaction, somebody's calling me and I don't know who they are, and I'm going to hang up. And now they hear you talking, and it sounds like 500 other people in the room. They're going to do this. You're going to hang right up.
Yeah.
And you don't want that, because now you've wasted your time, you've wasted somebody else's time, and if somehow they stuck around to hear what company you're with, now you've made your brand look less polished. And that's what a professional headset will do for you, Dave. It will
Absolutely.
give you that nice polish, that nice buff, that nice new car finish that
But
you
that's
want.
only but and that's one important benefit to using a professional quality headset. But Rolando, think about some of the other things that are happening here, right? So a salesperson finally has that contact on the phone. They sound good. So they're willing to engage. And now if the conversation gets rolling, they're able to listen to their client, or sorry, their prospect. So they're uncovering information, but they're hands free. Now they have a headset on. Now they can use their CRM. Now they can quickly capture the main points of that conversation so that you're bringing that forward into the next cycle of that sales stage.
That's right. And I've been listening to other folks that are um, on social media that do a lot of this type of thing and analysis, and they basically say that you have about 6 to 10 seconds to get your point across, and when you have somebody's attention. And if you've read any article in the last 10 years, you read how people's attention span has become shorter and closer to what a goldfish is at. All right, just Google it. You'll see a bunch of articles if you're listening and watching me. So if you have that much time to get your point across, to take information down, to listen, uh, to what the potential client is saying, you really got to optimize that conversation. And a professional sounding headset will get you there rather than talking to a speakerphone or sounding like you're in a boiler room with 500 other people. So those 6 to 10 seconds, you can make them count. So, Dave, how are you? My name is Rolando. I'm with Global Tech.
Right.
Do you have 2 minutes to spare today? You can hear that clearly. Again, if I had 500 other people around this microphone, you wouldn't be able to tell my voice from those other 500. So that's what we're trying to drive here. That you have precious seconds, make those seconds count, let the person be able to hear you, and then as well, sometimes clients surprise you. I have people call me sometimes, and Dave, you know what I tell them? Right now it's not a good time. Why don't we speak in 2 hours?
Yeah, that's a win for them. That's a win for them. They're able to get a follow-up call.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't hang up in my face. Maybe it's because I sound good. I'll tell you, a headset, very inexpensive tool. It's a very low
It's an
cost.
investment.
It's a
It's an
smart
investment.
investment.
A very smart investment. So, number one, have a plan. Number two, have a professional quality headset. So those are two mistakes that we see most often. And Dave, let's jump to number three, and let's do another listen up for this number three. Wow, love it. So, number three, we are going to reach in. I love grabbing ideas that resonate. All of my ideas aren't the best ideas. I love looking at and studying what other people are doing and working and seeing if I can bring it forward to other people. And so, one of the things that I want to do here with number three is talk about always the mistake here is always pitching and not engaging. And we're gonna talk about what that means.
Yeah.
So that you have your sales cap on and you're on 100 the whole time, rather than maybe in listen mode, maybe in empathy mode, which is what Gary Vee talks about, maybe in engagement, in true dialogue. So how can we best explain what this means? So,
Always pitching, not always engaging.
mhm,
That's it. Some salespeople, they have their own agenda, their own commissions in mind. Every call, it's about a commission. They're just thinking about themselves, and that's not where the prospect is. Sometimes it's not appropriate to pitch your product or service. Depending on what it is, you may not have listened or uncovered the reason to pitch your product. Right,
mhm.
Rolando?
That's right. And as you're saying, when you're pitching or having a conversation, uh, what you want to do is find a way to establish trust, and so that you can get to that next level. Getting a home run on one call is getting absolutely harder to do. Lives are complex, moments are complex. People are in a hurry. The old methods don't work as well. You have to be more savvy. So engaging and listening and truly understanding what is at play. There may be several factors that may be affecting the reason why a particular client may not be returning calls or may not be providing you answers. And being able to engage them in some form or fashion is really the right approach. And finding out what works for you is going to be key here. People that do well, and this is leading right up to the piece that I want to show you. People that do well in the role of trying to prospect are not always the people that hit 100 calls a day or nail 100 emails a day. And I've got somebody that I want to show a clip on that will amplify some of that. Ori, can we roll that clip?
I just did a consulting engagement with a CEO who had just hired a brand new VP of sales. And I asked, well, what have you done so far? Well, we segmented the reps between hunters and farmers. I'm like, okay. But now we're focused on activity and accountability. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's low.
sell your product with a commercial. He goes, what do you mean? I go, in 60 seconds, can you tell me why I need this and can't live without it? He goes, nah, it's too complicated. Oh, Why don't you focus on the people who are able to build that conversation instead of the people who can dial the most, who can leave the most voicemails, send the most emails? Sales is a performance. And what ended up happening is they got rid of the metrics counting and they focused on conversations. And the best reps who were at it would teach the reps who weren't as good at it. So everyone can pick up the phone, hit the numbers, and read the script, but very few can build a conversation.
Awesome.
Very good point. Very good point. You know, someone said a long time ago, don't pay your salespeople to make phone calls. Don't do it. Don't do it, because they'll focus on what it takes to get paid and not necessarily what to get the company paid.
And you know, I like what he's saying there about a conversation piece, because sales is really, there's a lot of art there, and and art is can be subjective, right? There's a lot of subjective things that happen, and we're always trying to measure success, so that we can understand if a particular person is good at what they do, and that's always the inclination. But you know what? When you have success, and success is defined differently by each person. So if we stick with the baseball analogy, Dave, Mariano Rivera, one of the most prolific relief pitchers of all time, he started out as a starting pitcher. He wasn't so good at the starting role, but guess what? He did much better in the relief role. And my point to that is that sometimes we want to put people in a particular role, but they may not be good at it. That may not be their strengths. And sometimes managers want to put people in a position because either favors or they have a need to fill. And I would encourage you as a manager, as a business owner, to try to find the right role for people. And if you have folks that are good at the art of conversation and listening to others, I think you may get better performance than if somebody that you bring off the street that says, yeah, I've been in all these other sales positions and I've hit all my goals. And I've always, Dave, let me ask you this question. I've always wondered, would you want to hire, Dave, you want to hire somebody that hits the quota every single time but makes mistakes, or somebody that may not hit the quota, but there are very little mistakes and errors in their work? Who would you go with?
Listen, we have the bottom line to protect, so we're all going to make, what do they say? You can't make an omelet without cracking a few eggs. So as long as the mistakes are not, as long as the mistakes aren't a major legal hurdle for us, listen, make some mistakes, get out there, don't be afraid to try. There's no secret to selling. Everybody reacts differently to a salesman. Yes, you can know your product inside and out, but it's working with the personalities that we have to that we're working with, so that you get that conversation, so that you get your engagement. What I liked about that clip, he had said he would take some of the strong performers and use them basically as mentoring some of the folks that needed some assistance. And I think that's always a good idea as well. You can learn from your peers. You can absolutely learn from your peers. But, you know, not being afraid to make mistakes, that goes a long way. So I would like to hire the person that's hitting their sales quota. I don't care so much about the person that can hit how many phone calls they're supposed to do, because their goal isn't to make phone calls. The reason why people are given those metrics is because they think they've done the math. If you do 40 calls a day, 5 days a week, with a conversion rate of X, you should hit your quota. You know, but I don't think selling is that easy. There's more to it than that.
You're so true. It can be and it's actually more complex than it was 10 or 20 years ago. When I started 20 years ago, we were just given some metrics, and here's what you got to do, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. And you know, people have consume information very differently than 10 or 20 years ago. Dave, you and I have this conversation all the time about, you know, in the old days, and it's still, I wouldn't say old days, you know, you had your list, and then you call off that list, and you just keep checking it off, and you know, you had to go through the list, right? Because the list was it, right? And
Right.
and the list was gold. But you know, those were in the days when information wasn't as readily available. Early 2000s, even mid to 2010s, things started changing where information is available to your buyer now on demand, on a video, on social media. They're consuming information in many different ways and forms. And the days of when I waited for Rolando or Dave to come by as a sales rep to pitch me the products, the new thing, the latest, the update, the upgrade, those days are, I don't know, Dave, to me, those days are over. The rep who came in, and there are still reps that come in to do that, but
Sure.
in the back in the day, the rep had all the information. The rep possessed all the data sheets, all the pricing. It was in their computer, their laptop. They're the only ones that had that. But just about any product or service, there are other things available to you to kind of inform you as a client, as somebody, depending, on the industry, there's certain things that are obviously proprietary and you can't get otherwise you're talking to a rep. But many products, goods, and services, a buyer now is much more informed and they can compare and shop around. So the role of that rep coming in using that list is very different. So today it may be the form of engaging on like LinkedIn, on social media, maybe using email, maybe using video, maybe using handwritten notes. You have to try to use all these different tools and see which one is you can most effectively use within your
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
And I know that in certain industries, gifts are like if you're working government deals, that's a no-no. You can't really send gifts to folks. You may be able to take them to lunch or whatever, but the things that work, double down on it. I'm hearing that more lately, Dave. Double down on what works. You have a product that works, double down on it. You have a particular style or particular way where you're finding certain salespeople or reps, they're nailing it in the results department, and try to amplify what's working. If it doesn't work, then hey, bring in the stuff that does work and
Yeah.
amplify that so the rest of the team can benefit from that knowledge.
Orlando, I like everything that you're saying. One of the things that I just want to talk more about, the clients, they understand the products because they have the information at their fingertips. So when they are looking for cameras, when they're looking for lights, when they're looking for a headset, they can go online, they can do their research on the product. But I think as a salesperson, by following a plan and a process, using the right tools, learning to engage, you're giving yourself an opportunity to give them something that they don't have at their fingertips. And that is the value that you bring as an industry specialist. They're not going to find that information online. I mean, if they find you on LinkedIn and they dig deep on you, then they can learn about you as an individual and how many years experience and what you specialize in. But following some of these simple steps will get them to open up the door and have that conversation so that they can say, listen, I know all about the products, but what is it about you as a unique individual? What can you offer to my business that I'm not finding online?
Tell me more,
And
Dave. What more can you bring to my business that I can't find online?
you're quizzing
Yeah.
me individually for you.
Yeah, I'm
Listen,
just role playing right now. That's all.
no, yeah, listen, it's about what you know, not what your product can do. The product, let's assume all the products are the same.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're working with someone that has a year or two experience, you know, the person that has 20 years of experience, that's who the client wants to work with, the person that can bring the most value, not the product that has the most features and functions, because that, we just said it, they have that information at their fingertips. They already know that. It's your job as a salesperson to present yourself and how you are going to take some of the weight off of their shoulders.
Let me reword something that you just said that you brought into my mind as you were talking about that. Uh, if you have the opportunity, I don't. Everybody that's listening to us may have different industries they're in, but if you have the opportunity to latch yourself onto a mentor that can guide you, the experience of somebody that's been in a company 15, 20 or more years is so valuable. I remember, Dave, when I started working my first corporate job, I had the great fortune of having a teammate in my team who was there for many years. He and I hit it off, and he took me under his wing, and I was able to advance in the company so much faster because of his mentorship and his guidance and him, hey, you got a lot of energy coming out of college, right? But here's what you want to do to be effective at letting those clients, because I had a list of I had a book of clients. Here's what's going to work with them. And here's what's worked for me. And I took what he did, packaged it in up in my own little way, and used a lot of his pointers. And I was able to build relationships with all of the clients that I had, and was very good at it, and was able to move up the company. But that happened because I had somebody that gave me some guidance, some mentorship, along the way. He says, try more of this, less of that, blah blah blah, and I move it into my own little spin and do it the way I wanted to do it. But taking that word of wisdom from somebody that's been at the company for a long time was very helpful, was in terms of building those relationships with clients as well as being successful at the organization. So it's a very, very, very good point. It wasn't on number 3, wasn't our 4th, but I would have probably put in, try to find a mentor that's really good and see if they would lend you some of their magic.
Yeah.
And so that you can also have that magic in success as well.
Yep.
All right, Dave. Bonus tip: find a mentor. Thank you, Ori. Thanks for putting that out. All right. So, Dave, I think we said it all today for our top 3 mistakes, or was there something else you wanted to add?
Nope. Those are 3 mistakes that we see often. We'd love for an opportunity to help you out with your second mistake. Come to us for some headsets.
All right. So let's go and let's do a summary for our folks that have just been tuning in. The top 3 mistakes that salespeople make or people make when cold calling or looking for new clients. Number 1, not having a plan. Number 2, not using a professional quality headset. And 3, the third biggest mistake is always pitching and not engaging. And we threw in a bonus tip: find a mentor within the organization that is successful at what they're doing, and see if maybe you can get some of that magic from them, and then take it on your own, put your little spin on it, and use some of that within your own sales efforts. All right. So we've summarized today's topic of top 3 mistakes, and let's go ahead and throw up the trivia. Let's see what the answer is. All right. So 2 truths and a lie. Which one is false out of these 3? Alexander Graham Bell invented a wireless telephone in 1880. Number 2, the smartphone was launched by Apple in 93, called the Newton. And the first commercially available mobile phone by Motorola was the Motorola Dynatac 8000X, cost almost $4,000 in 1983. Dave, let's see, Dave, which one do you think it is?
I think the lie is number 3. You know what? Anytime I see wireless with something from Alexander Graham Bell in the late 1800s, I bet that's true. There's something there. I don't know if it was a courier pigeon. I don't know what it was, but something in there.
Smartphone was launched by Apple in 1993. I don't know. I'm split on this one. Let's go with. You know what? I'm gonna join you here. I think the TAC 8000 was not $4,000. That could be the lie.
Yeah,
wait a minute. Let me change that. I'm gonna go with number 2. I'm gonna go against you here. Let's go with I'll stick. I'm gonna go with Apple in 1993. All right, and you're gonna go with Motorola.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Ori. Let us drop it down to see what's. Oh,
all right, good.
Okay, so we're good there on the first one. All right, so Alexander Graham Bell did invent a wireless telephone in 1880. Let's see, what was it? It was transmission of sound on a beam of light without wires. This technology was a rudimentary version of what we know as fiber optics. Oh my, 1880. Yeah. Cool stuff. All right. Let's go. There we go. The number 3 is true. So the first mobile phone, which was a big brick, that's what we call it nowadays, Was invented in 1983 by Martin Cooper. It could only store 30 contacts, weighed almost 2 pounds, weighed 2 pounds, and retailed at nearly 4K in US dollars.
I think that starred in a movie back in 1983 called High School USA. I'm going to have to go back and look at that, but I think this phone starred in a movie.
Right. And I'm sure they've been in a lot of movies. And so that means number 2. Look at that. I switched it up. I'm glad I did. So the first smartphone was actually launched by IBM. Look at that. Named Simon Personal Communicator, released in 94. It was the first commercially available touchscreen phone. Look at that. Touchscreen phone which could easily be operated with stylus or fingertip and came pre-installed with a calendar, calculator, address book, and notepad. I don't even remember Simon. I know that the game Simon Says, and Simon, I think there was a Simon, like a round type of thing, right? Wasn't Simon Says? Yeah. Just something just seemed wrong about that. I know that Apple launched the iPhone. That was their smartphone, so that's why I thought that was not right. All right, so Ori, thanks for keeping us on our toes, and I want to remind you, if you've liked this content, to like, follow, subscribe, hit all the bells and whittens, bells, hit all that stuff, and we'll appreciate it. Show us your support. We really appreciate that. You have comments for future show, drop us a comment. We read through these things. If you have questions, go ahead and also send us a comment. We'd love to get to you and see what you have questions on, and help you on your journey, whether it's finding a device or something else. So we really appreciate you watching us today. Dave, anything else before we go?
Nope. I'm looking forward to the upcoming summer season. Rolando, have a happy birthday.
Thank you.
And we'll see everybody next time.
All right. Catch you next time.